Just about a year ago, here in the center of the Oklahoma Capitol grounds, an idea was born when this was just an open, grassy area. And today it stands as the Murrah Tree Memorial. Here with us today again is Mark Bays. He's with Division of Forestry Services with the Department of Agriculture. And Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Yeah, a year ago when we walked through this with Camille Valley and Dan Cooper, who is the state horticulturist for Iowa, you know, we just envisioned all this. And it was really kind of the brainstorm of Dan Cooper to not only provide some sort of a memorial for what happened with the Murrah building, but then also to offer thanks for Oklahoma's support of all the floods that went on, you know, several years earlier in Iowa.
Well, it's a wonderful exchange, and what a great way to remember the victims of that terrible incident. We want to emphasize that I guess it was the Iowa State Horticulture Society planned this and executed the entire thing. Is that right?
Yeah, we asked, and you know, Nancy Denton with the State Capitol Parks here was involved in the whole process and said, we're friendly people, we want to help, but they were adamant. They wanted to do everything for themselves, and right down to the mulch. They even brought the mulch down from Iowa with them. So
my goodness, everything that they did the staking of the trees and so forth.
Staking of the trees, the layout, the design.
Great, it's wonderful, and a lot of you may have seen this in the news when the planting was actually done last November. But on Oklahoma Gardening, we want to follow up and show just how well the trees have leafed out. Emphasize again that there are how many? Is 150?
There's 150 or 151, I guess, of the little leaf linden, which is a variety of linden that's probably more suitable to the soil types here in Oklahoma than some of the other varieties of linden. And then there's 18 or 19 of the prairie fire crab trees that represent the children that are right around the center of the planting.
It's a wonderful, very formal planting as well, and Mark explained to me before we started taping that the intent is that this will grow up into a nice shady grove, and it will encircle and sort of enfold those crabapple trees, and that too will be representative. And if you want to come visit this site on the Capitol grounds, parking is very close by. There's some nice sidewalks around it now, and I think it's an excellent example of memorial planting that was done with the future in mind.
Right, and the thing that's important to know there is how much planning went into this. I mean, right down to where every single tree here, they even planned for the watering and maintenance of that tree, and there's a below ground drip irrigation system. They thought about how big the trees would get. They thought about them just touching at maturity, and so they spaced the trees according to that. And it really was nice to be involved back in November to see the whole thing finally come together, and particularly exciting with a lot of the grounds crew this year when the trees began to sprout out, and they were saying, okay, well, we're through the first tough time, but now the work really begins.
Right, and we want to emphasize that as you plan some kind of memorial tree plantings in your hometown, that it's not just buying the tree and planting it. You've got to think into the future with the watering, the mulching, weed control around the trees.
Being very careful to choose a tree appropriate for the location where you're wanting to plant your memorial tree, whether it's in a grove like this, whether it's a single individual tree in the middle of you know, your school's campus. Just we have a good variety of trees that do well in Oklahoma, so choose the right tree for the right spot.
Okay, and you could contact the county extension office, a local nurseryman, or your local forester, and they could advise you on that. And one last point I think to make is that look around before you plant something and make sure that those grounds are going to be there for a while. You certainly don't want to plant something next to where a road's going to be widened soon, or a parking lot will be going in, because that could be devastating to families on down the road. And Mark, anything else about this memorial?
No, just again, if you need our services for anything, we're there for you, and think long term. You know, a quote that always comes to my mind is, trees not only are treasures from our pasts, but they're also gifts to the future. So if we keep that in mind, I think we'll be doing a good job.
Great, that's excellent. Thank you very much. On such a windy day as this, it's wonderful to have the shelter of a big shady tree like this one. Before we leave the Capitol grounds, Mark wanted to call this one to everyone's attention. Apparently it is a very significant tree in our history.
Right, and if you really think about the significance of trees and the role that they have played in just the evolution of Oklahoma, the fact that on a windy day like to this, a lot of the soil is able to be preserved with all the shelter belts that are planted across the state. The significance of this tree is it's been here for quite some time, and it's kind of the entryway to our state capitol.
That's a wonderful tree. Now this is an elm, and as I understand it, it's to commemorate the birth of George Washington?
Right, this tree was planted, and it's the grandparent, or the grandparent of this tree is where George Washington first took control of the army back in July 3rd of 1773.
Oh, that's amazing. And we were looking at the nameplate beforehand, and this is a case where someone back in 1932 had a vision, just like with the Murrah tree planting. They wanted to commemorate George Washington's birthday. 1932 commemorated the 200th anniversary of his birth date. And so the Daughters of the American Revolution in Maryland donated this tree to the DAR members in Oklahoma, and in 1932 they planted this tree. So it's been here almost 65 years, and now it's a beautiful shade tree, and that's reason enough to get involved in significant tree planting.